Welcome to Growing Up B2B. I'm Delia, and I'm the second generation president of Delia Associates. We are the place where B2B brands go to grow. Hi, and welcome to Growing Up B2B. I'm Delia, your host and president of Delia Associates, the place where B2B brands go to grow. I'm here with a most remarkable guest, John Clark, and he's the president of E&J Parts Cleaning based in Waterbury, Connecticut. A most interesting business, E&J Parts provides precision cleaning services of complex mission critical parts and components in a variety of industries, and they've been at it for 30 years now. So John, thanks so much for joining us.
Ed, thanks for having me. When you first told me about this, I was so excited because you and I share a unique synergy, I think.
We do indeed. We do indeed, as a second generation, right? So take me back to the beginning, John. First of all, how did E&J Parts come to be? What was the original forming of that entity?
E&J started with my father, Jack Clark, and his partner, Everett, E&J. They worked at a metal finishing operation in Thomaston, Connecticut for 20, 25 years and decided to strike it out on their own. And I think I was 10 years old. So 1993 was when they incorporated the business. So I was 10. I'm 41 years old now. I was born in 1983, so 10 years old. And I remember those days and the uncertainty and my father just going to work. He went to work every single day, 16, 17 hours a day. And that laid the foundation for who I am today and how I operate.
Did you say, at what point did you join the business then? Obviously not at 10, a little bit later.
Not at 10, but I remember I have this funny memory. My dad would always he would always be at work, right? And he'd tell my mom, "Oh man, we're all working hard, a lot of hours." And one day my mom and I went to go visit him at work. And it must have been when they had first started because I was still small. And in our building, it's unique. We have two sections, and one of the sections, there's a ramp that goes down to a lower area where all the vapor degreasing and high volume stuff happens. And we were going down this ramp, and my dad was sitting on a barrel, reading the newspaper. And I thought that was so funny because, of all the moments that we would walk in, he'd actually be sitting down reading a newspaper. And that memory sticks in my mind so vividly. It's one of those things where you could do something the same way every single time. And once one person comes and looks, oh, I'm actually not doing what I said I was doing in that moment. But that's one of my core memories, one of my favorite memories. And I joke about that with my dad sometimes. And but yeah, so I like to joke. I tell my customers, I think I had trichloroethylene in my bottle when I was a baby. This business, it's in my blood. But yeah, I was 10 years. I wasn't in the business at that point. But by the time I was 13 or 14, I was down there sweeping floors, making boxes, sorting parts. I remember I couldn't wait until I could work on the vapor degreasers. It was like a badge of honor, right? I couldn't wait until they let me do it. And when I was 18, they did, maybe 17. And I worked my first overnight shift. It was 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And I was like, oof. That was hard. So that was my first, whoa, all right, this is an all day, all night thing. And I remember I smashed my finger in between one of the baskets at hour one. And I was like, oh, this is gonna be a very long night. And I remember getting home at 6 in the morning and just laying down on the couch and not waking up for about 12 hours. And I said to myself, this is what my dad does all day long. And I always wanted to be like my dad. My dad is my hero. He's my best friend. He sacrificed his life for my mother and myself. I'm an only child, so it's my mom, my dad, and me. And we're really close, we're really tight. And my dad sacrificed his free time, his future, really for us, so we can have a better life and we can have opportunities. And I carry that mentality and that methodology in my day-to-day life now. And I want to give that to my kids and show them that no matter what happens in your life, especially this is a very tough business. You get up and you go to work. And as long as you work hard and you show up every day, we believe that good things will happen. They don't always happen. Trust me on that one. But man, he set that tone for me and it's worked throughout my life. We always show up. We always do what needs to be done to make sure that our families are provided for and our employees are taken care of. And that's something he instilled in me since I was a young boy.
That's true.
But yeah, I'd say somewhere in the 13, 14, I'm in there sweeping up, doing stuff. I remember another time too, I got in trouble when I was 18 and we do this job. There are these big heavy brass keys, like what you would have for your house key. We do millions of these things. and they come in small boxes, but they're 30 to 40 pounds a box, and usually there's 72 boxes per order. So it's 2,000 pounds. And that's always the job that, it's the hardest job in the building. And, everyone's, oh man, keys, we got to do keys. Because they have to get weighed up too. So we have to load them in, and then we have to take them all out individually and weigh them all up. So it's a lot of lifting and it's a lot of weight. And I got in trouble, and he's like, you're going to be doing keys the rest of your life, buddy. So turns out he was right.
So take me back. So you were at 18, you started to get a little more hands-on, but you had that indoctrination from your maybe earlier memories of being exposed to the business. At what point were you really thinking, John, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get into this business. Like how old were you? Was it around 18 or was it a little bit after where you said,
no,
what I'm going to do?
It was not until the 20s because I wanted to do my own. I wanted to do my own thing. When I graduated high school, I went to a small community college here, and I ended up dropping out. And I started a online video game rental company.
Okay.
And started renting video games from my buddy's basement. And we ended up growing that company to a pretty decent level, and we sold it. I ended up getting screwed. There's a whole big story. I won't get into it here, but I learned a lot from that experience. But I remember thinking, man, this is easy. And my dad always told me, none of this is really real, bud. You know that, right? This isn't real life. And I ended up getting screwed. It was this whole private equity thing. I knew nothing about private equity and reverse mergers and all these complex financial mechanisms that acquire smaller companies. And I had no idea that any of that existed. I was 19 or 20 at the time. So I got taken for a ride, and he was right the whole time. But I had just bought a condo with my wife, or she was my fiance at that point, actually my girlfriend at that point. But we were 21, I think. We bought this condo, and that company had fired me from my own company. So I was like, okay, now what am I going to do? I have no education. So I said, if I can sell a business, I can sell a car. And I sold cars for 5 years, had a really strong sales background at that point, and then started a online marketing company selling Google advertisements to small businesses. So leveraging the sales background, cold calling, things like that, and trying to help I always liked small business. And so I took a lot of that knowledge that I learned there and brought it to the online marketing. That's just when cell phones really were getting big, and we were doing advertisements on cell phones. Facebook just came out. There was a lot of opportunity there, but that was a grind, and things didn't quite work out. And one day I was driving home from a faraway meeting. It was like $100 deal. I'm driving like an hour and a half, and I had a Dodge Ram 1500, and I'm like, I'm going down to the coast. It's like an hour and a half drive for me. And for $100, I'm like, this isn't working out. It's not working. I called my dad, and I was like, hey, what do you think about this? Like, I have this new sales background. I have some business experience. What if I come into the business and try to bring this brand to business and this new kind of like marketing and advertisement? We did a Google listing, website, things that he wasn't necessarily doing. My dad he's an operations guy. He's most at home in the shop, where I'm most at home customer facing. I like telling my story. I like talking about our business, investing in new technologies, and evolving. My dad's, here's how we do it. Here's how it's done. This is what we're going to do. And so we play off of that with each other. But that's how so I was like 28 or 29 at that point by the time I actually got into full time.
And what was your dad's reaction to that when you started to talk to him about coming into the business? Was he open-minded? Was there any concerns, or was that a pretty easy conversation?
He was very open-minded. I know he always wanted me in the business, but on my own terms, because it is a very hard business, and we use a very hazardous solvent. So it's not something you necessarily want your kids involved in, it's hard to say because it is a very difficult job, and you have exposure to chemicals. And so when you're a young kid, yeah, it'd be great if my son joined the business, but it wasn't like, hey, this is going to be your path. He let me do my own thing, stumble, fall, and learn. And I think that's one of the best gifts he's ever given me. And when I was ready, he welcomed me with open arms. And I think he saw the opportunity. And I want to say he was probably in his late 50s at that point. So I think in that stage in your career, you start thinking about, okay, what am I going to do? Like, I'm going to be 60 years old. What's the succession plan? Do we keep this thing going? And I guess maybe came in at the right time for him. So it just fit at the right moment. But it wasn't like, hey, I want you in this business from day one. But yeah, you can work here and see if you like it kind of thing. And then I did my own thing, and then eventually I came home.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, how about any other distant relatives or family members in the business, or just you and your dad?
Just me and my dad. My uncle Tom, my dad's brother, he was in a customer business, like a stamper. So we were all in the manufacturing. Again, we have a small direct family, but that's really it.
Okay. Okay. And so talk to me about the early years. So now you're in the business with your dad full time. What was that dynamic in the early years? Like, how did you figure out how to
This
sort of divvy up responsibilities and things like that?
that was hard, and I'm glad you brought that up because that was one of the things for me. There's already a crew of guys working there. Then I come in. It's like, all right, oh great, the owner's son. What do you know?
Hmm.
You don't know anything, kind of thing, and that was difficult to navigate. And the way my father and I operate, it's a team environment, and I need to show respect to the people that were there. Right, I'm not coming in saying, "Hey, it's my show now." It was never like that, and he made sure that it was never like that. Okay, here's where you're starting,
Hmm.
and you got to earn the respect from our employees and our coworkers. And so that was something that was always on the front of my mind. Listen, learn, and know your place. Like I drove the truck a lot. So really whatever needed to be done, I was trying to do it. And I wanted to make sure the guys knew that, okay, I'm here to help support as a teammate and make sure that that directive was known.
Over time, do you feel that they started to accept you, accept that you were there to be part of the team and to be a contributor?
Mm-hmm.
And how long would you say that process took before you were like, okay,
Okay,
I get it?
a year or two, I'd say. Even before that, when I had that marketing company when I was first starting it out, I worked second shift for my dad. So I worked with a lot of the second shift and third shift guys. So I knew them already going in. They knew that I was there willing to work, do the same type of work, and wasn't like, oh, I'm not going to do vapor degreasing. I'm not going to sweep a floor. I'm not going to drive a truck. No, I'm going to do whatever this business needs to get the job done. I'm willing to do it. If it's cleaning out the degreaser, scraping coils, sweeping floors, driving truck, whatever it is, I want to be the guy to raise his hand and do it and earn the respect that way. But I think, yeah, for sure, at least a year or two, I'd say.
So
And then once I go ahead.
I was going to say, sometimes people come into a family business cold. They don't really have the background. But as we're talking, John, you had probably close to 2 decades of experience and exposure to the business already under your belt. Not to say you knew everything there was to know about E&J parts cleaning, but you knew an awful lot, right? And I would talk about that. Did that help you walking through that door officially, having that background? Talk about that for a moment.
For sure. And I had the unique opportunity and benefit of learning from my dad. He's been in this business for over 50 years.
Wow.
50 years in this business. And man, I keep on saying this, but it's not an easy business. And for someone to do it for 50 years is a testament to his fortitude. And so I had the benefit of looking through it through his lens, like his perspective, right? Here's what this job means. Here's what we're trying to accomplish. So I wasn't just trained on a job, but it's more of the why we're doing it. So I think, and that's what I try to give my guys. Like when we talk about the new equipment, the new automated technology, I'm not training them to like just push the button. It's here's what's happening. Here's why it's doing it to create a greater wealth of knowledge. And that's what my dad gave me in the early years. Even when I was little, I was a teenager, I would just ask questions and he would tell me, here's why this is happening. Here's what this means. So when I was eventually on the degreaser, I had a good, strong base knowledge of what the degreaser was doing, why it was doing what it was doing, and what that meant to the cleaning process and to achieve certain levels of cleanliness, those different techniques that we use. So I had that sort of built.
Yeah, you had that. So I think the reason I brought that up is I think it's an important point for our listeners is that if there is a mother or a father who's contemplating bringing a son or daughter into the business, thinking about to what extent they're granting that early year exposure. And it was definitely the case in your scenario, John. And I can, honestly say it was the same with mine. I was, without even realizing it, just tinkering in the business at a very young age with no thought about, hey, I'm going to run this one day. But like a family business it permeates life, doesn't it? And there's the lines of division are not always as clear as maybe we would like them to be.
I agree with you 100%. And you and I have talked about that sometimes.
So now I know it was the case with me, and I don't know it was the case for you and your dad. disagreements, right? So maybe there's some things that you don't see eye to eye on. How do you and your dad work through those moments? Like where there's, how do you get to resolution? What's your style?
In years past, it was what he wanted to do. That's what we did, and he was the boss, and I needed to respect that, whether I had a different viewpoint or not. Nowadays, with the direction we've taken the company and some of the new tech that we have, it makes those decisions a lot easier because he's not as involved in the automation and the sustainability side of things. He just follows my lead in that regard. But yeah, like coming in, those first few discussions, oh, we should do this. Here, it's just, it creates a little bit of tension, and it's hard to navigate that. You and I have shared our thoughts on that together privately. And that's the most difficult part, right? You have to respect this person, right? They're not only are they your father, right? But they're also your boss, right? You're spending holidays together. So it's such an interesting dynamic. And I don't know that we found a way, like a secret to getting through it.
Okay.
I think it's just, you have to prove it out. I need to prove out that this is going to work for him to buy into it. Here's why concretely this is going to work.
Okay.
For him to actually like, oh, let's do it.
Okay. So that is a bit of a way. It's basically giving him some evidence of success or potential success before he commits and says, okay, John, let's do it your way. He wants to see a little bit of proof of concept. That makes sense. Looking back, you came into the business. You already had a good exposure to it. So you were coming in with a body of knowledge. If you can, was there a moment in time where you said, this was right, this was the right path for me, and I'm content with this path? Can you take me back to, there was a moment or a kind of a time period where you really said, yeah, this is what I should be doing with my life's work as the second generation?
Yeah, I think I can actually. I would say in 2016, we bought this, to us, new state-of-the-art piece of equipment, and it didn't really work out. And it was a real struggle. For 3 years, I struggled with that machine. It was a big risk for us, cost us a lot of money, and there was a lot of pressure and stress on the business. It was my idea. We got to do this. We need a hedge against trichloroethylene, right? This was 10 years ago. Got to have that hedge. And we had it, but the machine, it just didn't quite work out. We were a little bit early maybe in that regard. And that was a real low point for me. So 2018 rolls around. I'm like, oh man, this is hard. I don't know if this is going to work. And then we ended up moving on from that machine and reinvesting money into a second facility. So 2019 was when I really sank my teeth and was like, all right, I'm going to go all in on this thing. And we really started making some significant investments into this expansion and new technology. And I rediscovered my passion for the industry because I learned a lot about new ways to clean parts, new technology, new sustainable solvents, and new validation components to the business that can increase revenue and open up new markets for us. So it was more impactful for me, and it helped me say, all right, there's a real future here. Like this could be a real viable business. And not that it was, because it was. I say that not to say that this wasn't a viable business, because it certainly is and was and always will be. But now that we have this new technology, it reinvigorated my passion. And so I would say 2019 was when I really was like, yeah, we can make this our own now and take it to the next level.
Speaking of next level, how do you see, as you look forward now as a leader of the company, how do you envision parts evolving? And to what extent will you play a role in that evolution? When you look forward now, what do you see, John?
I see a business with fully automated technology, paperless ERP systems, barcode and traceability that will allow us to enter new markets that we previously wouldn't have even dreamed about. I touched a little bit on the validation. In the early years, I would get quotes for precision cleaning and would disregard them. I'm never going to do that, I would say. What's the market here? I remember thinking this stuff to myself. And my dad would never consider, it's not his thing. It's not like something that he was ever interested in. It's like, we want to clean high volumes worth of material. And I was starting to think, what if we can clean lower volumes of material, but to a higher level with a high precision, validated through a microscope? And that's exactly what we're doing now. So it's like, I see automation, I see sustainability, and I see highly organized cloud-based customer-facing portal. Wow. So it's a very exciting time at E&J, but we are all in. And with my dad. Like he is just as all in on this as I am, both financially and physically.
Got it.
So it's an honor to be
So
next
there's
to him with this. It's
a promising future, and you made some moves. Again, I think what I've noted is along the way, there's I think you and your dad share that hardcore determination, but also a willingness to take risks, knowing that they're not always going to fall your way. But you did take a risk not long ago, and it seems to be playing well. So maybe you could talk a little bit about moving from a material that's being phased out into a new way of doing, and what that represents.
Yeah, I get that from my dad. He's been putting his house on the line since I was a baby. To me. And he is successful because he goes to work every day. And he doesn't let outside factors disrupt what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And grit and that determination is something that I have so much respect for him and what he's been able to do for this business. And these investments that we make today, we're doing the same thing again. Our houses are on the line. Mm-hmm. We have another major piece of equipment coming in by the end of the year, which is huge and will change our business for the better. And I wouldn't be able to do that without, number one, his support, and number two, the willingness to risk my financial future and my children's future in the service of this business. And that's exactly what we're doing right now. And he gave me that. And yeah, it's hard. There's a lot of sleepless nights, but I know that I'm going to show up every day and I'm going to make it work. And that comes directly from his teachings.
And is it too soon to ask you if there's the possibility of E&J Parts Cleaning going to Generation 3? I know you have some young ones in the household.
A lot. Like, I have a 12-year-old and a soon-to-be 11-year-old, and they love the building up here in Terryville. So I have two, one in Waterbury and one in Terryville. And Waterbury is the original. It's an old building, but they see that, and I say that's where Poppy and Daddy come every day to earn a living for our family. And you need to see this. Like, you need to know where your bread is buttered because it's right here. I know you like coming up to the other place where we have couches here, and they like coming here more. But that's not what the business is, right? This is where the business is going, but they need to know where it was. And my little one, she likes coming up and looking at the microscope and doing some science stuff. So she's really interested in that. But I would love it if they would join the business. I really would. Okay. I don't know if they will, but I do think about that often. It's funny you bring that up.
You got time. But I'm gonna build off that point, because a lot of listeners, there might be some of that son or daughter who's thinking and contemplating, do I join into the family business? Is there a piece of advice that you might give somebody that was in your shoes, that was saying, do I get involved? Do I not? Do I do my own thing? What would you tell somebody if they were making that contemplation and thinking, hey, do I take the plunge? Do I join the family business or not?
The first thing that comes to my mind, and I've never really thought about that question, but as we're talking about this, the first thing that comes to my mind is to be humble and to understand your role and to understand how your presence impacts the morale of the team, of the existing team, many of which have probably been within the business for many years, have a status in the business. And you should understand that your presence in the business can disrupt not the morale necessarily, but the feeling, right? Like, where do I stand now? Now this guy's here, right? Coming out of nowhere. Maybe you've seen the kid around the office or something, but you're like, okay, now he's here. How does that? You should know to be humble, to listen, and to learn your first year or two, I think. Unless you're already in the business and you're already involved in some way, but if you're coming in cold, you need to have the humility to sit back and listen and show the respect that those individuals deserve that have been there for many years helping build that business.
Awesome.
I think if you go in the wrong way, I think you can completely ruin it, and you can totally devastate the business by doing that. And I think that happens a lot. So I would caution, have the humility to know that you're not all that in that business, and you should have to earn it.
Well said. I really like the way that you leaned in on humility, and I think that is a great lesson to learn, because it's easy, I think, for a young person coming in to say, I know everything and I'm so smart and I have all these ideas, without sitting back and watching and learning and understanding the implications of that and the implications of being there, as well as you remarked earlier, setting forth. And I think this was partly coming from you and your desire to earn the respect there. When your dad's willingness to allow you to basically, not be the boss's son, but to be John Clark, to be your own man, and earn that respect in the proper way to allow for that orderly transition to unfold. So I think your story's been great. Final question, John, before we wrap up. If somebody wanted to learn more about you or about E&J Parts Cleaning, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
We have a website, ejpartscleaning.com, which is actually going to be redesigned shortly. I'm really looking forward to the launch. My phone number is 203-757-1716. And you can get me anytime, any place. I'm available 24 hours a day.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time with us today, John. Again, this is Ed Delia, host of Growing Up B2B, and I've been speaking with John Clark, president of E&J Parts Cleaning. Thanks so much, John, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Ed. Appreciate it.
All right, take care. Hey, thanks so much for tuning into Growing Up B2B. To explore more episodes and insights, visit podcast.delianet.com. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please give us a rating or review on your podcast platform of choice. Having worked with hundreds of family-led businesses across my career, and being a second-generation leader myself, I'm on a mission to help every family business I meet achieve next-level growth for their organization. So feel free also to connect with me on LinkedIn and let's support each other. You can also find out more about my company at delianet.com. Again, I'm your host, Ed Delia, and thanks so much for joining us today. Take care.